In a more poetic return to form, Rod Serling's The Long Morrow is a wordy, romantic love story that leans heavily on its lead performances and the episode's fabled atmosphere. It's not perfect, but I think it successfully treads a path not easily traveled. Let's find out why. Commander Douglas Stansfield is an astronaut tasked with a 40-year round-trip mission to a foreign planet that might contain life. Weeks before he leaves, he falls head over heels for a coworker named Sandra Horn. The attraction is mutual, and the pair spend romantic evenings together, swimming in the fragile waters of their love affair. Stansfield will be gone nearly half a century, but because of recently implemented suspended animation technology, he'll only age a few weeks before returning home. After an emotional goodbye, Douglas's thoughts dwell on Susan while he floats through space, frozen in time. The 40 years pass, and Stansfield returns home, hoping to see the love of his life once again. In the research I did for this one, I've seen The Long Morrow often criticized for the extended dialogue Rod Serling gave his characters. It's true, many of the dialogue scenes and narrations with Stansfield go on for longer than they could. Serling was known for his verbose writing style, and it's definitely indulged here. However, this is one of those stories that it absolutely works for. It's almost like an old fairy tale, and this more intricate technique is aided by the overall tone this installment goes for. The score is a mix of stock music from older episodes in the CBS library, but it helps achieve a dreamy mood where a tale like this one thrives. The slower, more character and relationship-focused pacing is all part of the deal as well. That being said, without the chemistry of Robert Lansing and Mariette Hartley, there's no way The Long Morrow could have gone the distance.
Please phone.
No, I won't call. I'll pick you up. I'll be there at 8.
At 8 o'clock. Astronaut? Arrivederci. I've known you for exactly 3.5 hours. And already...
Already what, Sandy?
I feel a sense of... loss.
There's a believable, tangible connection between these two. Even when they're talking about what a wonderful time they've had together instead of it being shown to us, I totally bought their romance. It's that rare on-screen match that could make you look past how quickly they fell in love or the cheesy nature of their scenes together. Sometimes, these overtly intimate or stereotypical love stories just work. Admittedly, I think a good portion of why this relationship comes off so genuine is because of the underlying tragedy from its inception. We'll go over more of those details in the spoiler section. In an entertaining account of their history on a Blu-ray commentary track, Mariette Hartley recalled how she first met Rod Serling and became involved in the show. She was the president of her high school drama club and was so enthralled with the Playhouse 90 version of Requiem for a Heavyweight that she invited Serling to speak at her school. It worked, and he ended up giving a talk to the students. A few years later, Hartley was trying to break into Hollywood and ran into Rod on one of the studio lots. She reintroduced herself, and after Serling remembered her, she asked for a job. A few months later, the young actress was cast in The Long Morrow. What a swell guy that Rod Serling was. George McReady delivers Serling's long-winded text in an admirable fashion. He had to set up all the stakes and explain the space travel logistics, which could make his scenes tedious, but I think he managed to keep those moments engaging with genuine concern for Stansfield. He also looks like a younger version of Guy Pearce in Prometheus. Edward Binns was the only returning actor, previously appearing in Season 1's I Shot an Arrow into the Air. His turn as General Walters, the man in charge upon Stansfield's return, was credibly heartfelt. In all, the acting from top to bottom did a lot of heavy lifting to raise this teleplay up several levels. Director Robert Florey made a comeback to the zone after directing a pair of Season 1 installments. Adding The Long Morrow to Perchance to Dream and The Fever made him 3 for 3 in very different episodes. Perchance to Dream is a surreal nightmare. The Fever is a character examination of addiction, and his final show here was a celestial romance. I'll give him a lot of praise for pulling these stories off in such uniquely effective manners. Which is his best? I don't really know. They're all high-quality content. If I had to pick one, maybe I'd say Perchance to Dream, but it doesn't diminish his other teasy work. Along with director of photography George T. Clemens, the lighting department, and the rest of the crew, Florey created and captured some great-looking footage. Moody shadows paint the walls of larger spaces, adding to the melodrama. Any scene taking place in that large hallway feels like classic Twilight Zone, perfectly framed and lit, acting as an emotional echo chamber for our characters. The stasis pod and claustrophobic set Stansfield inhabits was an interesting choice. They explain how he wasn't exactly frozen in a block of ice, but they visually give off that impression. It's a serviceable backdrop for the commander's meditations on past events. With General Walters now in charge of the base, he's alerted to Stansfield's homecoming and learns of his unique situation. Susan Horn has been locked in a hibernation room since the commander's voyage began. She's still the 26-year-old Douglas left behind and made sure to stay that way so they could spend their full lives together. After a melancholy briefing from Walters, Horn reunites with Stansfield, but his appearance is quite different. 6 months into his mission, he removed himself from the suspended animation chamber to live out the 40 years naturally. The aim was that when he returned to Susan, they could be together for their remaining time. Saddened by their circumstances, Stansfield urges Susan to go live out the rest of her life. Heartbroken, she walks away, leaving the aged commander and young woman to pace the earth without the hope of being together, in a truly tragic case of cosmic irony. In their Blu-ray commentary track, Scott Skelton and Jim Benson, the authors of Rod Serling's Night Gallery and After Hours Tour, stated that there were additional scenes in the original script that depicted Stansfield removing himself from the stasis pod, contacting Earth, and aging on screen. That would have had a damaging effect on the symmetry of the story, so I'm glad those weren't shot. That double twist reveal is the most memorable thing about the episode. If there was a scene to add, I think it should have been a shot of Sandra in the hibernation room. That would have been more compelling than Walters mentioning it on screen and Horn just walking down the hallway in the next shot. In that same commentary track, Skelton and Benson say they believe Serling's script took inspiration from the 1905 O. Henry short story, The Gift of the Magi. It's not credited here, I'm not sure if it would have needed to be, but that tale's ending twist definitely has a similar impact. This is just done on a much larger scale. Another Rod Serling episode, The Trade-Ins, had somewhat comparable themes of growing old with one's spouse and how a multi-generational age gap could be the end of said relationship. This was by no means uncharted narrative territory for Serling. The big reveal shot of Stansfield walking down that giant hallway is epic, both visually and emotionally. Robert Lansing delivers an amazing scene as the same character 40 years older.
I've spent 40 years remembering you, Sandy. Painting a picture inside my head. I've spent 40 years surviving for you, Sandy. Oh, you go away now, Sandy. Please go,
Combined with Hartley's reactions, Lansing's words and facial expressions are shattering. You feel so bad for this guy. The minimal makeup approach is more noticeable in HD, but I think it was the right way to go. Lansing was in his mid-30s when they shot this, but he had an older-looking face. Accentuating that and relying on his performance made for the best-case scenario. This might not be the most popular installment of this series, but people seem to remember it. It shares a title with a Gilmore Girls episode and is paid homage therein. Yeah, that's probably the only time I'll mention Gilmore Girls in these videos, so enjoy it. The story spans from 1987 to 2027. Giving it a bit of a timeless quality for the last 60 years or so. The Long Morrow is a clear recommendation from me. Yes, it's an old-fashioned love story with a tragic finish, but that makes it even more relevant. In the Twilight Zone.